Is anyone else having trouble logging into Turning Point? Everyone? No? Someone? You were able to? Can I?
Show us your athleticism, bro.
Can I get one hand? Like, is anybody able to log into Turning Point? No one?
I'm trying right now.
Thank you. Good.
Is it working?
I haven't tried yet. I'm trying.
Thank you. Star Students in Science background. If Gardner can't do it, then if Gardner can do it, then anyone else can.
Gardner, you can click the button that says join college the roster for you, so you can get into it.
All I hear is hateful opinions.
And you're the reason why we're gonna have 900 votes on it every single motion. 955 votes. 955 votes.
What's the idea?
It worked.
What's it actually? Why is it not? Never mind.
Oh, he's a.
What does this mean? Troubleshoot that.
So you're Bardia?
Well, yeah, don't worry about the bardio.
Bardia?
Don't worry about the bardio.
Oh, I think our Turning Point subscription got canceled. That's fine.
I knew that was going to be place. And I knew that was going to be place. Okay, but no. You both are putting red tops in the great genie bottom.
No, it's whatever.
Yeah, it's no big deal.
Oh, okay. Gardner doesn't respect women. Gardner can't tell women apart. I feel like he's that scared.
They're all here, don't worry.
Okay, I need Andy to write his op-ed.
No one ever needs Andy. No one needs
His articles are so funny compared to Sonia's. Sonia's are
Oh yeah.
and then Andy's are like,
Have the new counselors contacted you yet after your photo?
Oh yeah, that's after. I think they're waiting until after.
oh, sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Do I have to say it? I don't.
Okay, so Turning Point will not be happening today. So we're gonna be
Yeah.
old-fashioned and use the placards. Very exciting. That's all I have to say about that. Just be ready.
I have a follow-up. I have a follow-up. Are we doing? No, for EA.
No.
No, yeah. Perfect.
I think what happens is like just the platform is
Sure. I hear you going to Rick's after. You going to Austin? You going to Austin?
Oh, okay,
You got to go.
really good point. That's really good. That's a really good point. You gotta go. Classic.
Nothing hits like it.
You're so gross.
When do you want to start? Seven, eight. Okay, no, just let me know. Start now.
There's a water fountain outside. I have to count for it. Forgot to count for it. Yeah. Oh, okay, okay. Well, all right, the second part of our February meeting is now called To Order. Two quick things for me before we start. The production team has asked us to speak louder into the microphones because they're having a lot of audio issues when they try to play back the recording. So make sure to speak into the microphone and speak very clearly and very loudly. And then the only other thing is that we're going to be using placards today to vote instead of Turning Point. Unless you're a proxy, you still need to use the proxy form on Google Sheets. Okay, amazing. We are going to start with VP election stuff. So how this is going to work is that all the VPs are going to get 5 minutes to speak, and just 5 minutes they're going to be cut off after that point. And then from there, we'll have after all 5 candidates have spoken, we'll have a 15-minute question period that is extendable through a motion. You can ask any of the VP candidates any question, and they will have 1 minute to answer your question, and you can frame your question to multiple VPs if you would like. So with that, we are going to get started, beginning with our first candidate, which is Omar. Yes, I'm grabbing them.
Just shoot my slides up. Wonderful. Now, am I able to walk around in the middle, or do I have to stay here?
You have to speak into the mic.
I'm making the mic. Cool.
Whenever you're ready.
Whatever.
All right, thank you very much, everybody, for having me today. My name is Omar Abdallah. I'm running for VP University Affairs, and I'm a fifth-year medical science student and psychology major. So my qualifications, they're up on the board here. I don't care about them personally. I think that's not what determines what a good candidate is, so skipping right ahead to what I want to get done. Mental health. I think the resources provided by the school are pathetic and a slap in the face to anybody who has ever experienced anything on school. I don't like the current system of you get 4 sessions and then you're dumped off to the London community. It's hard enough telling one therapist about what's going on, let alone a second. So I would like to see a change to a rotating panel of therapists that take on students as they come in. Once they fill up their, almost like a family doctor does, once they fill up their practice, then they get swapped out with somebody else that's able to take on more students. This ensures that a student can continue their conversations with a therapist without having to swap over. Boom. Academic accommodations. I think there's a solution that works for both professors and students. I know every student here is on board with SRA. I know some professors aren't. I think there's a way to get them on board, providing them with the knowledge that, hey, listen, if you're trying to teach students everything in your course and that's your value prop to these students, is that they're going to walk away with all of this knowledge, having that buffer zone is what induces the ability to learn all of that information. And without that buffer zone, you're leaving people to bus in the middle of a snowstorm or in the middle of while they're sick, or getting to class despite the fact that they're sick. All of these things are detrimental to a student's learning experience, and then you're expecting them to just hand in an accommodation the day of while they have COVID, and you think that's the solution. It's not, and it can be better. Free the Dot, I think we can need a partnership or a sponsorship with one of the menstrual product companies. That's something I've done many times with the ski club. It's not difficult. I think any of these companies would be happy to get on board with a university such as ours with a name like ours. There's a lot of money that Lauren has been able to acquire, and I think that can go a long ways in turning into I really want to turn our school into a campus that provides menstrual products for anybody, so that that burden mentally, physically, and financially does not need to be there for those individuals. Campus safety. I love what Sunday's doing with Wilma. I think that's fantastic. An addition that I would like to see is Foot Patrol. I find Foot Patrol amazing. The problem with it is they wear black jackets and you never see them anywhere. I think increasing their visibility and having them walk routes throughout campus just has that presence of mind that people are looking around and saying, damn, there's bodies on our campus protecting our campus. There's people that I can go to in case something happens, in case it's late at night, in case I'm by myself. I don't have to just call a friend while I'm walking. There's more than that the school is providing for me. Exam shuttle as well. Nobody uses it because of there's no times even for when it actually runs. So I think increasing accessibility to that is really important as well. Spoken Wave. I don't like their mission statements. They are student-run cafeterias or restaurants, whatever you'd like to call them. They need to be providing value to students. I don't want to go there and pay $10 for a burger and then another $5 for fries and then another $1 for a drink. I should be able to pay $10 to $15 and get a really good hearty meal that's going to keep me going throughout the day. I want to do a happy hour there. I think that'd be fantastic in a time that the Spoke is not really busy, 7 to 8 o'clock maybe. You come by, you can get a solid meal at a discount or a drink at a discount, something that encourages people coming and using the service. I think is really important. CAF hours throughout the school, I know it's advocacy-based because that's not something we really have power over as USC, but I think increasing those CAF hours, like the center spot has been increased this year, is really important. I do believe that students being on campus is the goal. Being on campus means you're learning on campus, means you're talking to friends, meaning you're studying together, meaning you're using campus resources, meaning you're going home and just hanging out and having fun at home, and home is not where you end up doing your work. People don't want to be on campus because it's not safe, because it's not accessible, because there's no way home. And I think all three of those things can be fixed very easily. USC website, it's dookie. There's nothing on there. All of the links are dead. They don't fucking work. Even trying to find the Free the Dot initiative on there, the links are dead. It says that you can get the product delivered to your house. There's nothing on there. That's so frustrating when you have all of these USC services, which are all run by really good people who work really hard, and then nobody fucking uses them because they don't know about them, and there's nobody advocating on their behalf. Nobody's out here saying, hey, I use this service, it was really great. So I think getting in the faces of softs and getting that out to the first years, getting in the faces of clubs and their leaders, and getting that out to their membership base and saying, look, I used Western Food Support Services. It was fantastic. You should use it too. I think that is really the key here. Boom. Food services. I want to do like a menu goodie bag thing. You come by, you grab it, you add some chicken, boom, you have a meal made out of that to kind of alleviate the burden on those people who are looking for a bit of a supplement to their finances. Boom. Gazette, I love it. I think it needs to support more students. I think it needs to do good and show good to make sure people are going, oh, wow, this person did this initiative and they got highlighted by the Gazette. I should do that too to try and help these people because I'll be rewarded for my efforts. Boom. Entrepreneurship, I want to increase that. It's unbelievable that only Ivy has access to that. All right, about 3 seconds. Mustang Lounge and Atrium, I wanted to support local businesses and support student businesses as well. There's a few more things. Boom, 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 boom. Sorry for going over time. I appreciate you guys taking me here. And USC qualifications, I don't have any. I've never been in this room before. That doesn't matter. I think I come in with a outside perspective, not a fresh one. And I think I want to challenge what can be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Maria.
Hey, hi everyone. If I haven't already gotten the pleasure to meet you, I'm Maria Faru, and I'm running for VP UA. I first want to take the opportunity to welcome our newly elected counselors. Although stressful, it's an exciting time in your advocacy journey, and it reminds me of my first meeting not that long ago, actually a year, but it was on Zoom. When I first got elected as nursing counselor, I often asked myself, what did I just get into? It's a daunting role, but one filled with opportunity. I decided to embrace the unknown. I launched myself into advocacy and quickly realized that students do have power to change the world. That's why I'm here today, because I believe each one of you can make this campus a better place, and I want to be the one to help. My experience as a member of UA subcommittee, as a spoke employee, as a peer support volunteer, as an international peer guide, and most importantly, as a student, have all impacted the way I navigate this campus. I understand the experience of being a full-time student and working part-time. I understand the experience of international students, being from an immigrant family. I understand the experience of being a STEM student who often feel underrepresented in our student government. Although the end of my term is creeping up, my advocacy journey is not over. Through my various consultations, I realized how much more needs to be done on campus for students to be able to feel safe and at home. From the remarks, I created a platform for students by students. This is why my platform focuses on EDI advocacy, outreach and transparency, student training, and mental health accessibility. Each pillar has a long-term and short-term goal attached to it. Every single issue that was brought up in my consultations is addressed. I can acknowledge that I'm not the expert, so that's why I reached out to you guys who are. But I do believe I have the skills necessary to uplift student voices. This is why I believe my pillar of student training is essential. As counselors, we're voting on behalf of perspectives that aren't sitting beside us, yet we are responsible for them. I want to ensure that every student feels safe to come to us and know us as the USCN here to support and represent them. Running for VP UA was an easy decision for me. I hope I make yours just as easy. Thank you so much.
We'll now move on to our EA candidates, starting with Harry.
Make sure. Is that good? Okay. Hello, everyone. Firstly, thank you all for attending today. I'm very excited to be here and share who I am and what I aim to bring to the USC's Vice President External Affairs role. My name is Harry Alabi-Sardina. I'm a fourth-year Business Management Organizational Studies student with an honors specialization in legal studies. I'm running for this position because I'd be grateful if given the opportunity to build off the work our Student Council has done this year in advocating for the needs of students to Western's external stakeholders, including the municipal, provincial, and federal government. Some of the ideas I'd like to address this year are related to affordability, transportation, gender-based and sexual violence prevention and response, racial and religious equity, and student employment. Starting with affordability, I'd like to address the problem with the Ontario Student Assistance Plan, or OSAP's student fixed contribution. OSAP's student fixed contribution for 2022 to 2023 is upwards of $3,600, representing the amount that all students are expected to contribute to their post-secondary education expenses. The problem with OSAP's student fixed contribution is it does not reflect the realities and the experience of students who are not able to contribute this amount of money to their post-secondary costs. To address this affordability issue, I want to work with the Ontario Undergraduate Student Alliance, or USA, to advocate for replacing the student fixed contribution with an expected student contribution calculated based on factors that may impact student finances, such as the cost of living. Next, I'd like to address the concerns of students regarding inadequate transit options for students in London, specifically the times and the number of London Transit Commission, or LTC, bus routes. To address this issue, I want to start by consulting the Vice President External Affairs regarding any information from London's public participation meeting on March 8th for the city's 2023 to 2027 strategic plan. This allows me to get an insight into London's priorities and initiatives to address transit issues for the next 4 years. I would then advocate to London City Council to outline transit strategies for increased frequency and expansion of LTC bus routes in London's 2023 to 2027 strategic plan, which is set to be complete in April and voted on in June. Regarding gender-based and sexual violence, I want to start by addressing the lack of transparency regarding how the funding Western receives through the Campus Safety Grant is allocated to address safety and security needs on campus. The Campus Safety Fund is a grant Western receives from the provincial government to improve students' safety through awareness and campus safety programs. To address this issue, I want to collaborate with USA to advocate to the provincial government to require post-secondary education institutions to publicly report on how the campus safety grant funds are being used. To address racial and religious equity on campus, I want to begin by focusing on the issue of inadequate funding for equity work in post-secondary education to combat racism and religious discrimination. I would address this problem by advocating to the federal government to create more grants for equity programs and services at post-secondary institutions, such as the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Institutional Capacity Building Grants. Lastly, one of the areas I would like to focus on regarding student employment is international student employment hours. Currently, international students are not limited in the number of hours they can work. However, this initiative by the federal government is set to end on December 31st of this year. I want to advocate for the federal government to lift the caps on work hours for international students permanently. As a final note, I want to thank everyone who took the time to consult with me and share their ideas and experiences throughout this campaign process. For anyone who I haven't had the chance to consult with, I look forward to meeting with you in the future. My commitment to letting your voices be heard and learning from you does not end here. Thank you again for inviting me and my fellow candidates tonight to speak. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and welcome any questions you may have during the question period.
Up next, we will have Kit.
Hello, everyone. Apologies in advance because I'm not a graphic design major, as you can tell. It's just really big, boring presentation. So, oh shoot, did I start?
No. Oh, wait.
Oh, dude.
Go for it.
Wait, so how do I switch this thing? Sorry. You got mine? Oh. Okay, so I'll be sitting. I will improve my technology skills by the next time I present, maybe. So, just that, yeah. Okay. All right. So, where's that? Hello, everyone. My name is Kit. I am a fourth-year urban development student and GIS student. It's nice seeing everyone's faces here. I did just send out my platform to everyone through their email, so it comes with a detailed list of things I really want to touch on. And thank you to everyone that I've consulted so far. I want to keep consulting. It's a continuous process, and I really appreciate all the time you guys have given me. Oh, sorry. So I guess a bit about me. My background in the USC, I don't have a lot, right? But I've been across campus, and so I've participated in a bunch of variety of activities, such as I was a varsity athlete throughout my career, university career. I was undergraduate representative for the Gender-Based Sexual Violence Action Committee that Alan Shepard kind of asked Nadine Whalen to lead to provide recommendations for his team. And also, I was a resident staff for Saugeen. So those are some of my most memorable experiences as a Western student. Most of my external advocacy comes from this experience I had. I had the privilege to be a part of the Students' Commission of Canada, where I was a facilitator. And so we all came, like a bunch of diverse youth from all over Canada came together, and we spoke on issues that we all really cared about. So I co-facilitated a team for gender-based and sexual violence. And so at the end of it, we drafted a policy document, recommendations, and we shared it with external stakeholders. So someone from, a member of Parliament came actually, and they listened and engaged with us youth, which I found was really amazing. And the next few days, we actually got $1 million in funding for our gender-based sexual violence recommendations. So it was for youth by youth. And it really sparked kind of where I want to go with this, with advocacy, because I know it's like the past, people in the past, it's people after me, and like it's a group effort. So kind of I have 3 guiding values as if I were to be elected VPA, I built these because I found that these were really important through kind of learning the process. So the first one is inclusivity and sustainability. Second is transparency and communication. Oh, my bad. I didn't know I had transitions. And then lastly, it's engagement and empowerment. And I think these are really important factors to building this kind of resiliency towards advocacy here at Western. So kind of what I really, kind of my priorities as VPA is to kind of engage the community a lot more. And yeah, some of my biggest focuses is definitely going to be on the community and the municipal level. I think that we can definitely build and sustain amazing relations on this level, which I definitely elaborated on in my platform. But of course, I'm definitely going to focus on provincial and federal recommendations as well. And I think I really want to tie it back to enhancing the student experience through this student engagement. So some of the community strategies that I have, right? So I definitely want to make documents more accessible. I want to make data collection much better. And I definitely want to up our student engagement, especially like through O-Week activities, for example, like OSERVs. I think that's an amazing way to get people immersed in government. I definitely want to make more of an effort to attend faculty meetings and also resident council meetings as well, address the first years. I think that's really important to start kind of informing them, and that way they can pass that on to future student leaders. Oh, sorry. Oh, shoot. This is much better. My back was also killing me. So for example, I'm going to quickly run through it. I know I've been taking a lot of time, but for example, this is how I kind of addressed my topics on my paper. So for example, the housing and affordability crisis is it's a crisis. I'm going to say it right now. It's so unaffordable to live. So I kind of started with a concern, and then so that's the problem, and then the long-term advocacy goal is kind of what we want to see. And then these are the actions that I kind of want to take as VPA. So for example, one of the things I really think would be great was a think tank. So what if we get students to come in groups and actually formulate their own solutions to kind of these policy problems, right? So I think that's a great way to get students involved and immersed in this kind of issue. Municipally, I think I want to focus on the strategic plan, budget review, gender-based sexual violence, community safety, and transportation. I definitely want to look into the town and gown committee that hasn't met since 2019. I think that's a really great safe space for people to talk to, to have conversations about. Another thing is in the provincial and federal levels, I really want to talk about gender-based sexual violence, housing, mental health, affordability, and experiential learning. And I definitely want to pursue leadership if I were to be elected at USA, UCRU, and of course send delegates to CASA conferences. Thank you so much. That was actually kind of perfect. I'm sorry I kind of was like this, so it was a really interesting kind of presentation for me. I'm sorry, but thank you again for your time. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them during the period.
Okay, with that, we'll now move on to the question period. So I'm going to invite all of I'm so sorry, Emily. It is your turn.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, everyone. So as mentioned, my name is Emily Poirier. I'm currently in my 4th year at Huron, studying global health, as well as refugee and migrant studies over on main campus. So I've been really lucky during my time at Western to have gotten the opportunity to engage with advocacy in a lot of different ways. I would say the two most formative experiences for me have been my current role as VP Student Affairs on the HUCSC, where I oversee all of our advocacy efforts, specifically around wellness, equity, gender-based violence, all those different areas, as well as I've also been able to engage with more grassroots and advocacy through my involvement with Safe Campus Coalition. I was one of the organizers of the Western Gender-Based and Sexual Violence Walkout last year, which some of you may have seen just generally. And I'm one of the co-founders of the resulting Safe Campus Coalition, which is a provincial nonprofit that advocates for safer campuses. I've also had the opportunity to be an USA delegate twice, so I've been able to engage with policy in a lot of different ways. And for me, that's meant developing a very specific advocacy lens and learning about how advocacy is inherently relational. And whether that means relations with your constituents, relations with the other people you're advocating with, and most of all, relationships with the people who you're advocating to. One of the most important things is making sure that the people you're advocating to trust and believe and have a certain level of respect in order to make sure that they prioritize the things that you believe in. So in order to engage better with both constituents as well as with external stakeholders, I want to really have more opportunities for students to engage with people at the city council, provincial, federal levels through things like Pints of Politics that happened this past year with the municipal election. I also want to attend more faculty meetings and just generally engage more with the faculty councils, because I think there's a lot of students who have a much better understanding of what their faculty councils do than what the USC does. Especially through my consultations, I've really seen how a lot of people have no idea what the VPA position even is. It's just kind of a nebulous role. So I really want to make sure that we have a better understanding as students of what is being advocated for on our behalf, as well as who is doing that advocacy and what that looks like. And in terms of my priorities, based on my consultations, I really identified 4 main areas that were most critical to students this year. So the first one would be affordability. So cost of living has gone up immensely over the past year. So in order to work more within that, I want to work with the provincial government in order to do several things. Firstly, to remove provincial interest remove the interest on the provincial portion of OSAP. So currently we have already moved the federal portion of the interest. I want to move the provincial portion as well. Additionally, I want to extend the grace period for repayment from 6 months to 2 years, which is when most students have actually settled into their careers and actually have a job that is sustainable enough for them to repay those loans. Additionally, international student tuition is incredibly high and is currently being used primarily to subsidize university functioning because the provincial government does not want to increase operating grants. And so I wanted to advocate for a freeze. However, I'm aware that that's something that is unlikely to happen. So as an interim measure, I want to work on creating a set-aside scheme like is currently available for domestic students. And basically what this is, it ensures that there is sustainable funding for need-based financial aid, and it's not just based on universities choosing to offer that financial aid. Housing, I want to develop what's called the Ontario Housing Fund, similar to BC, which allows the provincial government to fund different areas to fund secondary institutions building more student residences, since housing is becoming increasingly an issue, especially in London. And as Western continues to grow, it's going to become only more of an issue. I also want to advocate for rezoning for denser housing, for vacancy control, which basically is a function currently, right, when tenants move out, there is no, landlords are able to raise rent as much as a market will bear. I would like to impose vacancy control that will maintain rent along the consumer price index to prevent that kind of price gouging. Transit is also a huge issue, and I would say all 3 of these issues are incredibly interlinked. So I would want to prioritize increasing service to the north and west of campus, and increasing service and capacity for popular student lines like the 102, the 104, the 106, the 93, a lot of the lines that you'll have running past you on Western Road because they are full. And finally, GBSV is something that's personally one of my biggest priorities, as well as had been identified by a lot of students. So I want to continue the work that Jess has done on implementing the campus climate survey, which would mandate that all universities participate in a climate survey every 3 years to get a better sense of what safety actually looks like on our university campuses. I also want to advocate to provincial government to increase funding for GBSV offices to ensure that we have adequate GBSV support workers as well as prevention efforts. And also, I really want to work on strengthening Regulation 131.16, which is the regulation that it requires all universities to have a GBSV policy, as well as make mandatory GBSV training province-wide. So, thank you.
Okay, with that, that is all of our candidates. And now I would like to invite all of the candidates to stand along the back so that incoming and current counselors can feel free to ask questions directed at any of the candidates. I would ask you, since there are 5, to direct your questions at a specific or a few specific candidates. And this will be 15 minutes, but it is extendable. All right. And they will have a minute to respond. All right. Questions? Yes, Bianca.
All right, thank you. This question is for Omar. A large part of the role of VPUA is consultation and extensive collaboration with key stakeholders. Despite the fact that you do not have adequate policy experience for this role, you've decided not to consult with any of the voting members of social science, which represent 16 votes on this council and over 8,000 or almost 8,000 students at large. Why should we be confident in your ability to represent all students with Western admin when you can't even engage with this small representative portion for the purposes of this election?
So, great question. I know a lot about what I want to do, and that comes from the friends and people around me. A large portion of my time is taken up by the ski club. It's the first club on campus to hit 1,000 members. I would say that is a better representation of what the school would need than anybody else that I could consult with on an individual basis. Seeing their experiences happen right before my eyes and seeing what they need and what the school has been lacking over the 5 years, I didn't find it necessary to come and sit and talk to everybody here because I already knew the areas that I wanted to target. I'm happy to target more, but I feel like there's almost everything that would have come up on my plate, I've already had a way of addressing or have a plan to address. And the only person who I've yet to talk with is Lauren. And the only reason I haven't yet was because I didn't want to tarnish what I wanted to do. I wanted to see what she's been working on after I had my full platform put together, see what she's been working on because I want to make sure to continue her legacy. There's no point in starting over. That's the only person who I've wanted to talk to that I haven't yet.
That is your minute. Thank you.
Oh, awesome. But thank you.
All right. Further questions? Yes, Councillor Moshwari.
Thanks. My question is for the EA candidates. So I think all of you mentioned international student tuition, which I'm happy to hear. At the same time, this government is unlikely to budge on any kind of support for international students. So I want to ask, do you have plans that look at non-governmental options and have creative avenues of trying to get them through without the support of the provincial government?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Actually, we're going to go in reverse order, and then we're going to cycle back to the top, so we're going to start with Emily.
Thank you for the question. So I would say that in terms of non-governmental options, those are not a really big part of my platform, mostly because I felt that a lot of them were not really within the scope of the EA role. So I would love to work with whoever is VPUA in order to ensure that there are more financial aid solutions for Western students here at, and also as well as the VPSAs at the various campuses, since that student financial aid is separate. But I would say it's not a primary function of my platform just because I didn't feel like it fit within the scope.
And then Kit.
Hi there. Thank you for my. Whoa, that's so weird. Thank you for the question. So a lot of what my platform is that I want to also inform students. So I think informing our students at large, right? People also on council or through faculties, right? We can also inform them on what's going on, so that way they can also kind of come up with ideas and like share that with peers around them. And then so that way we can like even make a bit of noise, for example, like can hold meetings on campus to kind of address that issue, make everyone aware. However, I acknowledge the political environment that we are in, so I know the Ford government's kind of like, but sorry, I just have these weird kind of like quirks. But yeah, it's definitely not gonna be pushed away, but I definitely still want to advocate it regardless at USA conferences. It's definitely advocacy is like a lot of failures too, right? So it's a long time coming. Again, we have to keep focusing.
That is your minute. Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you.
Hi, yes. So first of all, thank you very much for the question. So I know that this is something I've discussed with many constituents in consultation. So I think one non-governmental way is definitely just increasing the awareness of job opportunities on campus. So whether or not we succeed in removing the caps for international student work hours, one way that we can definitely increase the number of international students that have opportunities within the labor market is just increasing awareness on campus of the opportunities that exist. The reason why I think this is such an important piece is because Western already plans to increase its student population to 15% of international, or the portion of international students to 15% by the end of its strategic plan. And also a big consideration as well is the reason why this the removal of the limit even exists to begin with is to address labor shortages, and one consideration, especially for international students, is 50% of them already report working as a part of a way to make income, or a part of their income. So yes, that's one non-governmental way.
All right. Thank you. Are there further questions? Yes, Councillor Kimis.
My question is for both, like all candidates, like VPUI and VPEA.
Can you phrase it for?
Can I move forward?
Can you phrase it to not all five? Just because the question period is only 15 minutes.
Okay. So my question is like this. USC has a good relationship with the affiliates, and we always try and strive to build a really robust relationship with affiliates. But like sometimes in some of the priorities, affiliates are left behind in terms of consultation. So how do you plan to collaborate with affiliates counterparts in terms of representing the needs of affiliate students?
We're going to begin with Maria.
So that's a great question. I addressed this in my platform that when there are no counselors elected for affiliates, we should still have students on behalf of them coming into our meetings, or especially the meeting where we're voting, so those voices are heard and not left behind. And that's what we want, I want to put an emphasis on.
All right, Omar.
I think the affiliates don't feel like they belong here, so they don't ask for anything from Western a lot of times. Their resources are much more limited than ours are, and I find it really frustrating that we have so many things and so much money and so many events happening here, so many resources, that they don't get to be a part of because they don't feel like it's a part of them. And I think bridging that gap is important in saying, hey, we're having an event, we're having a service. It's open to you guys. It's accessible to Huron. It's accessible to Brescia. Something like Free the Dot, for example, is not on Brescia the way it should be. It should be much more targeted towards that school, as well as Kings and Huron. I think a big part of making sure they feel like they belong is making sure that they know that these things are open to them and that it's also beneficial for them. And that's something I'm going to be advocating for.
Kit.
Yeah, so one of the things I really want to improve on is communication, right? So I really believe in reciprocity, give and take, and I really want to reach out instead to Huron, Brescia, and Kings, and try to attend council meetings, or even just meet with their community leaders, or even just host town halls open to everyone available, right? I want to be accessible, I want to be approachable. I'm a people person, and I really want to make sure that this role is, set forward. I want to make sure this role is accessible, and there's no kind of opportunity or knowledge gap divide that kind of separates the students at large from these positions. Thank you.
Emily?
So as an affiliate student myself, I would say this is actually a really big priority for me. I've been really lucky as a HECSC VP. I've had a really great relationship with USC, but I know that's not the case every single year. And so as EA, there's a couple of things I'd like to do. So firstly, I'd like to join some more of those HBK roundtables that do happen a few times a term in order to get more of a direct relationship with affiliate VPs, affiliate presidents, all those things. But another thing I really want to work on is that within the affiliate agreement, there is actually a lot of room for the affiliates to be doing a lot more independent work when it comes to municipal law advocacy. So I would really love to bring the affiliate VP SAs, VP student life, presidents into that municipal lobbying to really bring that voice forward, because I think that municipal level is really the level at which you see those differences between different affiliates and different campuses, especially like transit, housing, there's much different access. So those are some of the ways, and as generally also just keeping a really open line of communication, attending council meetings, all those things are huge priorities for me.
And then finally, Harry.
Hi, yes. So again, thank you very much for the question. So I think a big thing for me is definitely just respecting the work that that affiliate campuses are already doing, and that I maybe overlook, or maybe I did not have enough of kind of a scope to understand some of the issues relating to their campuses specifically. And one thing that I think is a big consideration is bringing both students at large, but also students at the affiliate campuses to conversations historically only kind of consisting of USC leadership. So one kind of idea that I have with that is kind of continuing the work of this year's council of bringing more students at large to municipal lobby weeks. So the one in November as well as in March. And that's kind of something that I've got a little bit of insight into starting this year. I want to continue that as much as I can to really respect the work that is being done, and really some of the areas that I think the affiliate campuses do better than the university.
All right. Are there any questions? Yes, go ahead. Mr. Seraphim.
Thank you. My question is for the VP UA candidates. Both of you have mentioned mental health as an issue in your platform, and many people mention that as an issue in various council campaigns, and unfortunately, since it's a pretty big issue, nothing happens. It's easier to bring up issues like this than to come up with solutions. So my question is, do you guys have any concrete plans you want to implement on how to better our mental health services?
Wilmer, you up first.
Yeah, so I think it all starts with not saying the word advocacy and not fucking off and going talking to Western for more money. That just takes way too much time. Yes, obviously that's something I'm going to be working on and trying to do and continuing the work that Lauren's been doing, but that just takes too much time and nothing ever gets done, like you said. I think we're students, the USC is for students. I think the solution should come from students. I know everything that I've dealt with in my past, all of my solutions have come from my safety net around me. Granted, I might not have sought professional help like somebody else might, and yes, of course, that resource needs to be there in an effective manner for those individuals who are seeking it, but I think your safety net around you is the most important thing in your life, and that's what I'm looking to build with expanding the services the USC offers in terms of peer support. I also want to implement a peer support system within every faculty so that you have somebody a few years above you that knows exactly what you've went through, exactly the exams that you might be struggling with, and exactly the same maybe cultural background or just like where you grew up background as well. That kind of person being able to relate to you and tell you how they got through their problems, or it might be somebody completely new who has a completely fresh perspective. That's going to be a hell of a lot more effective than talking to Western.
Thank you. Maria.
So I have a short-term and long-term goal for mental health. I wanted to break it down just to carry on what has been done and what can be done for future. So my short-term goal is the policy paper is up for review next year, and I wanted to accurately represent the post-pandemic lifestyle for students. So that includes those students who had academic years online and don't know how to take an exam in person. And that takes an extra stress on students. So I want the next policy paper to accurately represent them, because that's how we will be working with administration, by working together with students here and reaching out to students beyond counselors so we can represent them well on the policy paper. And then my long-term goal is to hire more mental health counselors, because we are growing as campus. We need to be supporting them and grow our numbers of mental health counselors as well. And those counselors need to be from a diverse perspective. Currently, that is lacking and underrepresented, so to the current mental health counselors, I want to offer cultural awareness training, better EDI training, and also a perspective that is missing currently is eating disorders. There's no okay, cool.
And this will be our final question without extension. Councillor Mohan.
Hi, everybody. This question is for the EA candidates. So the USC historically has put in a lot of resources into our provincial and federal organizations, USA and now UCRU. I guess two-part question. One, do you plan to run for leadership in any of these organizations? And two, in the next year, where do you see our advocacy priorities being between the three jurisdictions of government?
Beginning with Harry.
Hi, yes. So I think I would really want to start by being intentional in my decision to pursue leadership within these student alliances. The reason being is I really want to know if the focus of joining leadership or being a part of leadership at these student alliances aligns with what needs to be done at Western. And one big consideration is that taking on the CASA observership this year is going to add more work for the VPA role. So we've already kind of taken on those responsibilities. There are certain mandates that we have to comply with in their observership roadmap. So I think I'd really want to kind of take a holistic kind of perspective into what would we like to do at Western and how is being a part of these alliances and pursuing leadership positions within these alliances aligning with what we'd like to do here locally on our campus. So, thank you.
Kit?
Thank you for the question. I definitely intend to pursue leadership in those roles if I were to be elected. Especially for USA, I would definitely love to kind of help steer the conversation onto whatever topics that may come up during these delegate conferences. As for UCRU, I know there's like a lack of funding towards that, so I definitely I'd keep an eye on it. We are still members, but I definitely do want to shift that focus to more CASA. We have more opportunities. There's like a lot more conferences that we can send delegates to. Delegates, they have to pay like $100 per person to attend. I think it's a great way to get training, get people immersed in these opportunities that might not have experienced before. I have never personally experienced one of these conferences, and I would love to. I would love to get my voice out there. I would also love to share these experiences with different students across campus at large as well, not just with USC, people within the USC, right? So through that, I definitely want to pursue leadership and kind of drive and align our goals as well with USA and CASA, maybe UCRU if they're alive. Thank you.
And finally, Emily.
So this is something I've actually considered a lot during my platform, and I would say, first of all, I would consider running for a leadership position within USA, not in UCRU. From all the information I've really gained about UCRU is that it is currently not a functional organization. It is not an effective organization, and so I don't believe it's an effective use of my time as VPEA if I were to be successful to take on that kind of leadership role. However, USA is extremely effective. Additionally, USA's strategic plan is also up for renewal next year, so really taking on that leadership position and helping to set strategic vision, I think also has ramifications beyond just this year, also farther out to the next 4 years of USA. And additionally, I would say my priorities would be primarily municipal and provincial, because I feel like the issues that students are currently facing are much more local to those jurisdictions. Federal advocacy is always great, but I would say that my advocacy would be limited to around 3 or 4 different points, especially around international students, and would be more focused especially on the provincial level.
Perfect, thank you. And at the, yes.
Motion to extend by 10 minutes.
All right, can I get a seconder? Councillor Cohen, are there any objections to extending this period for 10 minutes? If there are none, well, you do have a vote, technically, but if there are none, this question period will be extended for an additional 10 minutes, beginning now. Councillor, or Amal, sorry.
I have a question for the VPUA candidates. Western has been going through a lot of growing pains recently. We know that our first year class grew significantly, and there are plans to continue growing our incoming student bodies. That's been made very clear, but there's been little to no increase in the service and facilities and space that we provide to incoming or to students in general. So there's a lack of, you can think of it, right? Like mental health appointments are taking a really long time, doctor visits, things like that. What's your plan to tackle those growing pains, and how do you work to help alleviate some of that stress?
Beginning with Maria.
So I feel like the resources we have now are great, but they are lacking the support that they can give to a lot of students. So to alleviate the growing population, I think we have to push for more funding within these sources and like increasing mental health accessibility, like adding more mental health counselors or advocating for more space. Like I know a lot of classrooms within the UCC go underused. So going around to see how we can use things that we kind of already have but have not been using properly. So that's what I want to start with, by seeing how we can take our current resources and start using them properly, and then again advocating to keep growing them in order to meet our numbers.
Thank you, Omar.
So a couple of issues. I don't think that the services are being overused or burdened yet because nobody knows about them. The services that USC does have are all completely empty. Yes, the doctor is a pain in the ass to wait, and so is the mental health. Those are the only two things that students really rely on. And I think that My Doctor Now is going to alleviate some of the students going to get a doctor's note. I would also like to see, as Maria was saying, obviously increasing the counselors on campus is a must. The space within USC, it can be used in a multitude of ways that it isn't right now. I think pushing for the classrooms during exam season to be open for students to use, I think is the way to go to get them more study spaces. These are the things that people actually will use and need. And once you prove to Western that, look, you've got this huge incoming class, they're coming in, they're actually using the services that we're giving them, give us more funding, give us more resources, that's when you're going to start to get a response from them. They're not going to listen if you say, yeah, give me more money for food services. Nobody goes down and uses food services or whatever other service USC offers. No one's going to listen to you actually advocating for anything if they're not being used. So I think pushing for those students to want to use those services via softs and clubs are the way to go to get those services more funded. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kermack.
This question's for Omar. So throughout your time at Western, and most notably during this year's USC presidential campaign, you've been noted for your sexist comments and rhetoric. For example, you stated that the Gazette op-ed last year on female representation on the USC was BS, and the USC has more than enough female representation on campus. Given that your values do not align with that of the USC, why do you believe you are fit to hold the position of Vice President University Affairs?
I love that question. The comment that I made, I did not say the USC already has a lot of female representation. The comment that I made was directed towards the individual who wrote that interview, or wrote that op-ed, saying there isn't any representation in the Western USC. I'm also not doing anything about it. I'm instead going to complain about that and use that to my advantage and weaponize it so I get more votes the next year. I think that's bullshit. I don't think you should have a right to complain about something that you can do something about. If you have the position and the power and the know-how to put yourself in a position to help other people, it's your responsibility and your duty to not sit there and complain about it, but instead to do something, to help those people who cannot be helped. In terms of, Omar's sexist comments, absolutely not. Look at my exec team for Ski Club, 60-40 women to men, okay? You're talking about, how do I support women in these roles? Hiring first to fourth years, giving everybody these opportunities to be engaged on campus, to be a part of a club that's humongous, and to learn a lot of resources they'll take on throughout their years. If I was sexist, I'd hire men. It's that simple. That comment to that individual was directed at them because they're phony, and in my opinion, they don't deserve that position.
Thank you. Councillor Dart, go ahead.
Is this working? Yeah. Each of you have mentioned gender-based sexual violence or campus safety in your campaigns. I wanted to ask if you had any ideas for initiatives that are non-training or non-education, just because I feel like that is a common answer that will definitely be implemented further in the future, that you would want to see implemented on Western's campus moving forward.
Is that directed at all five?
Yes.
Okay, then we'll begin with Emily.
So I would say, in terms of gender violence prevention, the literature really shows that the majority of preventative efforts are primarily education-based. So mostly, to answer your question, I would say that most of my platform would be relying on that education-based portion of it. The one exception to that would be with the strengthening of Regulation 131.16 with the actual strengthening of following sexual and gender-based violence policies, because currently, provincially, it is required that all campuses in Ontario have a GBSE policy. However, there's no enforcement as to whether that's actually being followed in terms of the renewal timelines, in terms of student representation, in terms of any of those issues. So I would say that would be the non-education piece for me, but for me, it's also partially about the rhetoric, about gender-based violence is not about, like lighting is a huge issue, but I would say it's not, the most effective way is through education. And so that's why I really focus that on that in my platform.
Kit.
Sorry, can you please repeat the question again? I'm digesting so much information, so I just wonder if you sorry.
Just since you all mentioned gender-based sexual violence or campus safety, I wanted to ask if you had any initiatives that you wanted to implement on campus that were not necessarily education or training based, just because that is a very common thing that we see implemented year over year.
Of course. So again, I'm a big data person. I really like collecting data. It's part of my degree, I guess. But I definitely want to get more feedback from students from ways they think would be more effective than, let's say, a training module on OWL. I think students know what they want, and I think that we have the power to kind of can give it to them if it is feasible. If we can develop some kind of awareness program, also get them involved. But additionally, within the municipal level, I really want to push the strategy framework that London has. Right, they really want to prioritize safety for women, and through that, I really want to look at transportation community safety. I know that it's not the most effective way, but that's also something that
Thank you, that's your minutes.
Sorry.
Harry.
Hi, yes. So again, thank you very much for your question. So I think the first thing is definitely just looking at the positionality of Western and why we have such a problem dealing with this issue when other schools historically have been more kind of intentional about dealing with this issue. And I think one kind of thing that I mentioned earlier that is related to this, for example, Guelph, when it comes to reviewing the funds that are allocated through the campus safety security grant, right? So the campus safety grant, they clearly outline on their website that it's allocated through the vice provost office, specifically student affairs, and it's done in consultation with students. When you go to Western's website, there's nothing that mentions any consultation with students, and it's even directly under the president. So I think just looking at the positionality of Western and looking to other schools and how they've been able to manage this issue better than Western, and looking at adopting some of the initiatives that other schools have implemented already.
Maria.
So I'm going to touch on what Emily said. It is big part of education, is a big part of having a conversation, and even this year, we've seen a lot of the conversations have gone way of gender-based violence, and the one way I want to bring it back is not having an OWL quiz, but rather an in-person interactive I'll say training session, just to open up those conversations again. I had a consultation with one of the members from SSSC, and they had women in STEM come in and just talk about privilege and talk about these, and actually have a conversation, just so you're able to open up the floor to keep the conversation going. But I do want to start consultations and see what campus would like to see and the students beyond counselors would like to see, and collaborate with organizations that do specialize in gender-based violence.
Finally, Omar.
So I love that you indicated a solution that isn't education or just telling people about it. I've got a few. I think the foot patrol being more visible and walking routes throughout the year is really important. I want to talk to Greek Life. I already have, and they're interested in working with the school and becoming integrated again. I understand that's such a taboo topic and they're all evil, bad people. They're not. They want to come back and they want to help and they want to make an impact. A solution that I've already come up with is during the orientation week and then also during exam season, having individuals from Greek Life on both sides come out, have bodies on campus, having hoodies, having chargers, having a presence of mind of individuals you see that you know are going to be able to direct you to help or be able to direct you on your way to make sure that you're kind of oversought throughout the way. Because everybody knows those blue help buttons, you can't see one from every spot of campus. There's areas that are dark and not lit up enough. And again, trying to advocate for that will take too long. These students are ready and willing to help. And then in return, they're asking for campus space in terms of for meetings, and they also want to attend workshops. The other solution that I really want to push for, I went through something where I had an individual that's close to me that went through something, and I think there is no support for those kind of people. You can't help the person, the victim that went through that, the survivor, sorry, if you don't even know what's going on and you can't deal with your own shit. So I think support for those individuals as well will, again, help that safety net that I was talking about to make sure everybody around you can help those who are going through something like that.
That exhausts our extension. Councillor Kermack.
Motion to extend the question period.
All right, for how long?
10 minutes?
Sure. Councillor Moshwari will be our seconder. Are there any objections to extending? Okay, if there are none, we are extended for 10 minutes starting now. Questions? Councillor Moshwari. Oh, actually, have you already? We'll take the question from the gallery. Go ahead.
So this question is directed towards Omar. Within your Gazette interview, after speaking about your proposed walkouts and specifically mentioning President Alan Shepard, you were quoted in saying, "I'm going to do it. I don't care if it makes us look bad." In this role, you are required to work directly with university administration, and noting that prior to potentially being elected, you've already begun to burn bridges with these key stakeholders. How do you plan to succeed in this role, and is the longevity of the USC's credibility in jeopardy with you as an executive?
I don't know much about how the USC works. I've admitted that previously. But if you think for a second that Western is working with the USC, you're fooled. They're giving you whatever's left over at the end of the year that they can't claim on their taxes or can't claim as surplus. That's ridiculous. And if that's the relationship that we have, then I say burn that shit to the ground and create one in which you actually have a power position over Western. You are the student population. You are what they have, okay? So if you're sitting there and saying, well, they're giving us this and we're working together great, it's all well in the hood, it's not. It literally isn't, because look at everything that we have in terms of problems today. Mental health, EDI, the fact that there's nothing for eating disorders. The reason these things aren't funded is because they don't give a shit. And us saying, well, maybe next year they'll do something is not the solution. And if you want somebody who's going to sit there and just say, maybe the year after that, or the president after that, or the organization after that will get it done. No, don't vote for me if that's what you're looking for. If you're looking for somebody who's going to get shit done this year, like I have in everything I do throughout my career at Western, then I'd appreciate your vote.
Thank you.
Hi, this is a question for all three EA candidates. A critical part of success in the EA portfolio is nonpartisanship. Regardless of your personal political views, how will you approach working with various stakeholders on different levels of government?
We'll start with Ken.
Hello. Thank you for the question. I think I have a very different approach for municipal versus the provincial and federal, because they were just recently elected last year. I think I really want to attend some council meetings. I want to attend standing committees, and I want to really reach out to them. I want to start fostering safe but uncomfortable conversations about student concerns and bring them to campus and have them engage with students. And I think just having this connection and building that would definitely help possibly reinstate the Town and Gown Committee. And then so for the provincial and federal, I definitely focus again on USA, on UCRU if it's still active, or most likely CASA, in our efforts. However, because of the activities that has been going on, I don't see a lot of action next year, but I still like to keep that in the back burner.
Harry.
Again, thank you so much for the question. So I'd say the biggest thing is, again, being really intentional in the transition process to carry on the relationships that our current student council has. So I think that's a big part of really hitting the ground running, is making a good having a good introduction to the current external stakeholders and building those relationships early. I think another key thing is, no matter what the issue is, you really have to look to frame it in a lens that the government will hear you. So I think a big thing is misalignment of priorities and kind of goals within the government and students, and for students, is a big kind of barrier to why we don't see some of the things happen on campus. And I think a big thing is really just understanding what are the priorities of government going into the year that your term is in, and what are the priorities of government that you think you may be able to influence for future terms, because that's going to be a big consideration for the kind of future of advocacy at this school. So I think just kind of reiterate aligning priorities and starting those relationships early.
And Emily.
So I would say one of the most important things when it comes to maintaining relationships with stakeholders who you might not necessarily agree with or who might have very different views is remembering that at the end of the day, I think everyone has the best interests of people in general at heart. I think that approaching it from a way of looking for commonality instead of looking for opposition is really important, whether that's with internal stakeholders or whether that's more external. I would also say that making sure that priorities are makes sense for both the role and making sure that you're aligning that with different areas. So I would say specifically, like for example, with a government that is maybe not as willing to engage in funding universities like this current government is, of making sure to pitch it in a way that is much more, for lack of a better word, conservative, that is taking much more of an approach that aligns with ideology regardless of my own personal ideology.
Okay. Are there any further questions from the gallery at the back by left?
This question is for Emily. As VPEA, a big part of your advocacy will inevitably be directed towards the municipal government. You mentioned that transit was one of your main priorities next year. My question is, therefore, what concrete steps do you plan on taking to address such an urgent issue? Thank you very much.
So in terms of transit, I would say specifically working with the LTC Oversight Committee and really building strong relationships with the commissioners that are currently on there and with the local counselors who are on there would be a really big priority. Additionally, I would say Kit has also touched on this in his platform, but I think the Town and Gown Committee is a really good venue for these kinds of conversations. From my own experience within committee work, it's a really good way of engaging with counselors that is much more of, it's an active way of ensuring that you have a regular conversation on student-facing issues. So I would say ensuring that the Town and Gown Committee would also be an approach with that. And then just generally working generally with the LTC much more closely, since it is a separate organization or has a lot more jurisdiction separate from municipal government specifically.
Lauren.
Thank you. My question is for both the VPUA candidates. So one of the primary roles of VPUA as an advocate of the 30 or so thousand undergraduate students and professional students that we represent. One of those really important roles is sitting on university committees like the Gender-Based Sexual Violence Advisory Committee, Senate subcommittees, academic integrity, etc. How would you ensure that student voices are consistently represented on these committees, in addition to writing policy and being accountable to your platform priorities?
You can go first.
I feel like I have started that. Consultations is the way to go, and reaching out to people is how you represent them well. With my platform right now, I made sure to reach beyond just counselors. I reached out to faculty counselors, reaching out to the portfolio you currently have to see what is working and what isn't working, and making sure those voices are included, because VPUA is a listener. These aren't my ideas. I reach out to experts who know more than me, and those are the students that I will be representing as VPUA. So that's how I want to sit on those subcommittees, by ensuring I take feedback from all students through consultations and invite them into the projects we're working on.
I don't think speaking on behalf of other people is the way to go. I think getting those individuals in those rooms, speaking their minds and saying what they want to say is the way to go about it. Regardless of how many consultations you'll have, you'll never be able to represent what that individual is trying to get across as well as they will be. Maybe having open mic sessions or town hall meetings, more of those to get those people in those spaces to be able to say their voice, to make sure their voices are heard. And then the most important thing is making sure they feel comfortable to come to these things, whether it's making sure that those posters are up and telling people, hey, if you want your voice to be heard, make sure to come out to this day and this event. And then incentivizing that, right? If there's free food, if there's free something, or it's during an accessible time or an accessible spot on campus, those people are going to be able to feel comfortable enough to come out and say what they want to say. And that's the only way to ensure that those voices are actually heard.
This will be our final question of this period. Councillor Meshwari, you have the last question.
Thank you. My question is for everybody. Sorry, Bella. But I would ask that you respond in accordance with the portfolio you're running for. So notable lack from the detailed platforms that I've seen in your presentations today is the acknowledgement, representation, and support of queer students. Considering in the past couple of years, queer students, and not just in their students, but in their identity, have been embroiled in vitriol and controversy. I want to know what your plans are to address not just supporting them, but understanding the seriousness that exists in terms of safety.
We'll start with Emily.
Thank you so much for your question. I would say that one of the biggest things that I would want to identify within supporting queer students would be ensuring that we're taking an intersectional lens when we talk about gender-based violence. I think a lot of times when we talk about gender-based violence, we see it as a women's issue, when it's not. It is an issue of anyone whose gender expression or whose sexuality is not in conformity with what what hegemonic powers would say is the correct way to perform your sexuality or gender. So I would say that would be a really big part of it, is working to ensure that when we are talking about gender-based violence training, that we're not just talking about how do we support women, we're talking about how we support queer people, how we talk about gender-based violence in the context of queer men, of trans women, of trans people in general, because these are incredibly specific. These are groups that have an incredibly high rates of sexual violence, but that are often underserved. So I would say that would be one of the priorities for me. I would also want to see some of the evidence that's going to be coming from the USA policy paper on Two-Spirit and LGBTQ students. It's going to be coming out in the next few weeks. It's being debated this weekend at USA. So I'd really like to take my cues from there in terms of provincial advocacy and funding, but that would be one of my big priorities.
Thank you. Kit.
Hello, thank you for your question. At this point, I like to acknowledge that advocacy is difficult in the sense that some people they don't. For example, I'm queer, right? And I don't like to say it. I'm not out. So that's one thing that's really difficult, because sometimes you want to get your voice out there, but you're also conflicted, right? So there's that kind of barrier for LGBTQIA students that we face. So I think a good thing is to find some kind of anonymous kind of way to also support these students, because some of them don't want to out their identity, right? That's something I've been trying to hide, but find ways to also kind of advocate. I think this is going to be an ongoing conversation and a lot of research, but I don't know, but at this point I also want to thank Lauren, because her advocacy works, the previous VP UA advocacy works for example, Free to Dot. It helps a lot of people. And I don't know, I do need to do more research on that to come up with other ways more sufficient for students. And I want to find that through feedback forms. Thank you.
Harry.
So thank you very much for this question. I think I want to take more of kind of a personal approach to this. So I think a big thing is really being intentional about providing an opportunity to hear the voices and concerns of all students, especially those who are disproportionately affected by student-facing issues. I think another thing as well is moving away from just thinking of these student issues as something to use only as your work, but not implement in kind of how you are with others as well. I think a big thing for me is definitely just being very acute, I guess, when I'm listening, and making sure to take the issues that are coming forward to me and bringing them into kind of actionable steps that want to be taken by by the groups that I'm consulting with. So I think just really not speaking on behalf of anyone and kind of being very intentional in my own kind of conduct to not do anything that would kind of not align with what I'm advocating for. So I think that's a big personal piece for me.
Maria.
Thank you so much for the question. I agree with everything that has been said, and also like a lot of international students coming here, this is where they find their place to express themselves, and I want to make sure those students have that space to do that safely, and safety goes beyond just physical. It's like the campus culture that we build together, and ensuring that those voices are within any policy papers we write or within any initiatives that we do want to start within the USC. And I want to go beyond just having 1 month to celebrate Pride. Having a continuous conversation throughout the year is important. It's just not a 1 month thing. And most importantly, I will not want to speak on behalf of these students. I'm not the expert, so I would want to collaborate with them and bring them into these conversations.
And finally, Omar.
So I grew up in Newfoundland, and I grew up Muslim. And for a large part of my life, I loved everybody, but I definitely had internalized homophobia. And it took coming to Western, becoming a leader on campus, and then seeing those individuals around me to realize that I had a problem. And it took talking to those people and being open and honest about who I was for me to understand their experience and their struggles, for me to be able to change who I am. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you're ever going to feel safe on this campus, because you might not ever. And regardless of any initiative or how many police are on campus or how many lights there are, the way you feel might never change. But we can make those voices more heard. We can make spaces for those people more accessible and more funded and more out there for those people who are looking for a place to belong. I think a club like Spectrum, seeing how well it's done over the year, is really important because it shows individuals from that community are looking for a place to belong. And I don't think they're happy just belonging with themselves anymore. I think they want to belong with all of campus. And I have no idea how we're going to get to that, but that's what I want to do.
Okay, thank you. That exhausts our second extension. And with that, thank you, candidates.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, so to move on to our first motion, we have the exec reports. Are there any questions at this time? If there are none, are there any points of debate or amendments to be made? Okay, we're gonna do placards and also proxy forms. So if you are proxy, please vote in the proxy form. Those in favor of approving this motion, please raise your placard. Those opposed? And those abstaining? Okay, this motion passes unanimously. Feel free to clap.
Yeah.
Okay, our next motion. It is the student financial aid policy paper PCR approval. Would the mover like to say a piece? All right, are there any questions? Are there any points of debates or question or point of debate? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I spoke about this with Lauren, and just for the sake of the record, I wanted to highlight some language in the paper that I would like to see changed. So that language is the language of equity seeking and equity deserving. I'm finding that this phrase is a little euphemistic, and would like to see that represented as the the body text is developed. So yeah, I just want to highlight that, going ahead to have consistency in our language.
Are there any further points of debate at this time? Okay, if there are none, again, proxies on the form, please raise your placard if you are in favor. Quickly, please. Lower? Opposed? And abstaining. Okay, this motion also passes unanimously. You can clap. Gardner? President Gardner?
Motion for a five-minute recess.
Seconder? Councilor Kiwisi. Are there any objections? If there are none, I will see you at 8:27.
That wasn't me, was it? No, it was me. Vicky is, yeah. That's,
She had asked me for the.
She's scared when she does this. I know I'm gonna get an email halfway through. Yeah.
We have to start taking
I'm sorry. I just want to keep things moving, but you're right.
Please return to your seats.
I saw it, yeah.
Yeah, are you cool with Chris Joyce?
Of course.
I don't think there's a meeting Chris ever wants to miss, so.
I see, yeah.
Tell him.
For your question about the referendums, we can only go back as far as 2010 for this week, just because everything else is like scattered. But I'll give you like everything we have, and then the ones that we don't, I will try to piece it together at some point and send it out.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's just kind of.
even if like I just even like have a closer show like what the process is.
Oh
I
yeah.
just don't know.
Yeah. Of course. Sounds good. Okay. Awesome. See ya. Are you complaining right now? It sounds like you might be complaining a little bit. I do not, but also this meeting is like disgustingly long, so maybe we're gonna try to. Oh, and you don't point at me.
Oh.
Yeah, guy's always there. Jumps. Say hi to him. Say hi to Andy. No, say hi to all the mic. I'm excited for this. That was fun. Sorry. Yeah, it was though. Yeah, I was covering my face for like half it. It was just like I couldn't. Oh yeah. Yeah. No, it wasn't for me.
All right, back to our seats, please.
We gotta sit down.
Matson. Felix.
I got sent like fucking 7. People just kept adding them and adding them and adding them. I'm gonna try to run through them though. Yeah, they sent the radio and do that stuff. That's not for me.
Okay. Don't make me gavel.
Gavel.
Back in your seats, please. Okay, so we're moving on to the budget approval, and we are going to hear from our mover.
Okay, perfect. So the way this process worked was the questions that you had on the floor last council meeting, as well as the ones that you put into the Slack channels, I went back and have tried to answer them best to my ability. I'll start off with the Gazette and Radio Western budget narrative. Did people have a chance to look over those? Yep. Were those to people's likings? Do you need more? Is that okay? Okay, perfect. Next up, someone asked about the marching band fee and what that was used for. That's used for upkeep of instruments, uniforms, spaces, and travel. Those are the main pieces there. Yep. Next up was late night bus usage. So, Belly, can we pull the...
Under view. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so this service on regular school weeks runs Thursday, Friday, and Saturday from 12:30 a.m. to 3 a.m. So the numbers you see here, we have 1 year, which is pre-COVID, obviously the 2 COVID years, and now us getting out of COVID. What I'll also say is that the bigger months are usually when it gets colder, so I imagine those numbers will go up. So some of the reason that you may see the numbers being down right now, a couple of different factors. First one I would say is when we transition to kind of online or virtual bus pass pickup. So a big piece of our marketing or communications was in the in-person experience. So when you came to try to get your bus pass, you were greeted with pamphlets, flyers, explaining what this was. And this year, we didn't have that exact same comms push, nor did we have it through the pandemic, obviously, when it was shut down for some of those months. Other reasons, well, most reasons our students don't really know about them, but there are changes coming to the program. So a change, first of all, that happened last year, 2 years ago, was we started with 6 shuttles and we now have 4. That was a environmental change. It was like a push from different groups on campus. And then, so what we're doing now is we're going towards an on-demand system starting in April. So the 4 buses will still have a route around campus, but there's also going to be an app that you can download in probably April, June. And we're just testing it out in the summer. That's why it's not happening in September. And basically what it says is that you can mark down what pickup spot you are going to or you're at, so the buses can prioritize those routes to come pick you up. One of the things we're seeing in these buses is that they pick up kind of like 1 or 2 people at a time, kind of sporadically. And what we're hoping to do is have a bigger, more of like a cluster model, so we can pick up more students and drop them off at different locations around campus. That's the big change there. Sophia, was there any other? Yeah, there, go for it.
Do these numbers include the exam shuttle? Because that was like a part, like when you're talking about the late night bus service, this includes both the Mustang Express and the exam shuttle. Is that correct?
So this is Mustang Express, and so the exam shuttle we had to, it was like a contract, and we don't have those numbers right now, or I don't know, I'm not sure if we can get them. I assume we can. So I don't have those right now, but this is just for the late night express for something, but we can also have that conversation about exam shuttle too.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Next is referendum fee increases. This was a question about kind of which ones increase and when. Melissa and Meyer were nice enough to go back into the archives and look through all of the referendums. There's a lot of them and they constantly change, so here's what I have. So for student building, which there's also a question about that, which we'll get into, it increases, a lot of these increase with inflation, or CPI, which is a consumer price index. But what we do, or we try to do with USC, is if we don't need to increase by that, we don't. So this year, you'll see we increased by 1.5% across the board for most things. We should more or less be increasing by about 7%, but if there's not a need, we don't do it. So for student building, it goes by inflation. For student healthcare, it may adjust annually. It's kind of loose language. And then LTC bus pass, the referendum says to increase 5% annually, starting in 2011, but we also negotiate with the LTC, so the number can change. And Radio Western can increase by inflation. So those are the ones since 2010. I spoke to them all recently, but we can go back further at some point maybe. Next, student writer in residence. So the program itself, or the position itself, okay, well the person is not here, but anyways. The program itself, or position itself, isn't scrapped. We're just giving it more over to Western, because it's more of a Western piece. You'll see that they post about it all the time, and they have the main communication lines, so they can also pay for it. Student building fee, beautiful. So student building fee is our lease agreement. It's like what we pay in tenants, what we pay in rent, basically, as well as any sort of like extra costs associated. That's just what student building fee is. Any follow-ups? Okay, I will now open it to any questions that I did not cover. Beautiful. Okay, so no questions. Thank you.
Points of debate or amendments? Okay, if there are none, again, proxies, head over to the proxy form and please raise your placards if you are in favor. Lower? Opposed? And any abstaining? Okay, this motion also passes unanimously. Moving on to the changes proposed in policy review. Are there any questions? Unless anyone would like to, this mover would like to speak. Okay. Any points of debate? If there are none, please raise your placard if you are in favor. Lower? Opposed? And those abstaining? Okay, this motion also passes unanimously. Okay, this is the motion on the teaching board's rules of procedure. Unless the mover would like to speak, then are there any questions at this time? Yes. Perfect. Are there any further questions? Okay, if there are no questions, are there any points of debate or amendments to be made? If there are none, we're going to call it to question, so please raise your placard if you are in favor. Lower? Are there any opposed? And are there any abstains? Okay, this motion also passes unanimously. This is the motion on the Indigenous Students Association resource membership. Unless the mover would like to speak, are there any questions? Are there any points of debate or amendments to be made? Okay, if there are none, please raise your placard if you're in favor. Okay, lower. Are there any opposed? And is there anyone abstaining? Okay, this motion also passes unanimously. Don't think we have any for discussion items today. So unless there's any new business. Oh. We have our questions and comments from the Western community. So if anyone from the gallery has a question, please step up to the standing mic and feel free to address anyone in council. Okay. What? Councillor Cohen is. You have to say something.
Oh, motion to adjourn.
Okay. Councillor Kinumisi will be our seconder, as always. Unless there are any objections at this time, this meeting is terminated.